listen to Count Richard von Coudenhove Kalergi. Today is Wednesday the 12th of March, and that sound you listened to earlier on was the sound of the V1 buzz bomb, of which 9,000 of them were launched against England. 3,500 of them actually hitting London, and with 16,000 people injured and over 5,000 killed. Well, there's a fox there. And I just thought, after watching the footage of the drone hitting Moscow apartments, you can only imagine the terror that people must be feeling sitting in their apartments, wondering where the next drone is actually going to land. And I thought I'd put that together with this sound as regarding the Second World War, as to the population of London at the time, which I think there were 7 million people living in London, and how terrifying it must have been to hear that sound. And the terror really began only after the engine actually stopped. It was a pulse jet engine, and it had a range of roughly 130 miles. So the V1 was launched usually from France and had a speed of around 420 miles an hour and effectively was untouchable. Flew at a range at an altitude of around 3,000 feet, so it was an extremely noisy and frightening event. But interesting note in relation to the Ukraine situation now, over 80% of the casualties on both sides is a result of actual drone killings, whether it be armoured vehicles, whether it be people attacked by drones individually. And I have to say, to see soldiers being targeted individually by drones is actually a horrible scenario. It's very like the Terminator. Now, that archway we just passed there is one of the entrances to Rathfarnham Castle. A beautiful archway it is too. They spent a lot of money doing it up. And to my left we actually have the Dodder River, and the lights ahead there behind that will be Mount Carmel Hospital. But also in relation to the drones now, that there's so much electronic warfare going on between the Russians and the Russians and the Ukrainians, that what they're starting to use now is fly-by-wire drones that could have a cable because of the effective countermeasures that has actually been used. That what they're actually using now is drones that are flown using fly-by-wire fibre optic cables, so the drone itself could be 10 miles away by the time it impacts. So that way it no longer needs the satellite imagery or GPS to target things. And at this stage now there's over 100 different types of drone being used on both sides in combat. And interesting today now, the 12th of March, we have Micheál Martin going over to have his chat with President Trump, and I have to say I can't wait to see what's going to happen over there. And there's an article today saying that the Burke family members have actually gone out to be at the event, so hopefully they'll get to meet some of the American administration, and especially Mr. Vance. Maybe somebody like Steve Bannon could interview them. And could you imagine if the Burkes, while they're in America, claimed political asylum on the grounds of a persecuted religious minority? But that would be a real cracker. And also there was an article in the Irish Times which said that Mr. Trump should, instead of being given the Peace Prize for trying to stop the war in Ukraine, should be given the Charlemagne Prize for reuniting Europe. Personally, I think that it's a globalist Europe that only thinks that Trump is, and you can see the Ukrainian flags there. And I forgot to mention that this is actually Orwell Road. We would have passed the Russian embassy on the right hand side there, which had a guarded car parked outside, and has done for months now at this stage. So I'm just going to turn onto the Lower Churchdown Road here, and you'll see the dropping well, the Milltown Golf Club is behind that high wall there. But in relation to the Charlemagne Prize was first put forward by Count Richard von Coudenhove-Kalergi, who happened to award the prize to himself back in 1952, and it has been awarded to those involved in the federalising of Europe. Some of the more unusual recipients were the Pope one year, the Euro got it, Winston Churchill got it one year, and who else got it? Pat Cox, amazingly enough. But it'd be very interesting to see now what the response will be tomorrow, and I can't wait to see what the reaction will be, and so I certainly look forward to that. And also, brimming on the background there now, we have this push or suggestion, which is that there may be bringing back water charges because of the extra population that seem to be living in and around in Ireland. Nothing to do with mass inward migration, of course, nothing to do with that, nothing to see here, move along. And very interesting as well, during the week I spotted quite a few articles that were promoting the idea that it's actually racist to ask a foreign person, yeah, but where are you originally from? And yet how many articles give descriptions of people possibly involved in criminal activity that the person, their country of origin, where they are originally from. You know, this is new to the parish nonsense. Now we're on to the Milltown Road here, and you have the Milltown Arch there, the 9 arches, which, you know, every now and again the Lewis goes by, and I have to say a great service it provides. But there are a couple of comments which are my own. I might just throw in a few videos later on of a couple of things that caught my attention during the week. So I'll say good night, good luck, and God bless.
London is doomed, said Dr. Goebbels, and Adolf Hitler's intuitive propaganda experts claimed that in its first few days of attack last June, V1, the flying bomb, the robot bomb, the buzz bomb, had almost entirely removed the city of London from the war-scarred face of the earth. But soon even German propaganda changed its spots. Once again, the great, patient, enduring city of London was suffering. Suffering, but alive. You can sit back in your seat in this theater and see and hear V1, but you cannot imagine how London suffered and worked and fought. Find yourself as V1 might have found you, coming at you from dawn to dusk, from dusk to dawn. Any day, all day. Any night, all night. For 80 days and 80 nights. You're an office worker coming home around 6, and this is your house. You're a passenger on a cross-town bus, and this is the end of your last trip. You're a kid at school, and this is your lesson for the day. You're an airman on leave, and this is your welcome mat. You're a diner in a restaurant, and this is where you had your last bite. You're a patient in a hospital, and this is your final treatment. You're a worshiper in a church, and this is where you kneeled and never got up again. Yes, London suffered under V1. 23,000 buildings utterly destroyed. 1 million damaged. Over 5,000 lives lost, over 16,000 broken. But London worked. You're a member of a heavy rescue squad and you dig with your hands to save a life. You're an attendant in a first aid station and you haven't slept for 3 days. You're a GIMP and you break patrol to help the London bobby. You're the man on the street. And you do what you can. London suffered, and London worked, and London fought. You're part of the crew of an Ack battery on the south coast, and you can't close your eyes. In the 80 days of the V1 Blitz, you bring down more than 1,500 bombs with Ack. Hard down on the south coast, in the white sun and gray mist, and in the nervous night. You're a member of a unit in the balloon barrage. In the 80 days, you bring down nearly 300 buzz bombs with only steel cables stretched in the sky. You're the pilot of a Tempest or a Mustang or a new type of Spitfire splitting through space. And you bring down nearly 2,000 pilotless bombers in the 80 days. And it isn't easy. Yes, you fight back and you come down in the thousands. But some get through to the villages and towns of southern England, and some get through to London. And their numbers are also in the thousands. They come droning and sputtering and roaring, and you don't know when they'll suddenly stop and drop on you. You're a farm laborer, and it's like sitting in the dentist chair when they come over, only worse. You're a hairdresser in for a swim on Sunday afternoon. It's like seeing snakes if you don't like snakes, only worse. You're a citizen of southern England, and it's a matter of life and death. Your life and your death. You're a roof spotter or any kind of spotter, and there's nothing you can do except watch out for them and pray. London wasn't doomed, as Dr. Goebbels said, and London wasn't finished. But London was hurt. 50% of V1's total of 8,000 launchings were brought down. But there was death and pain and chaos. Schools, hospitals, churches, time-famed landmarks were high among Adolf Hitler's targets of blind chance. Women and children headed the casualty lists. The city was hurt, but the city will heal. The people of London, of all England, are beginning the work of reconstruction now, are on the job at this moment. Nearly 100,000 of them.
With the travel arrangements of any particular family, and I'm not aware of any issues around that. I mean, people are free to travel.
Would you have an issue if they did attend?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm going to represent the Irish people on behalf of the government of Ireland and the people of Ireland. I have a lot of functions on all week, and that's what I'm focused on. I'm not familiar with the travel arrangements of any